All right, hey class, it's Mr. Danner. I'm going to go through the lesson. It's titled on our classroom. It's titled, I think, 1.7, 1.8, what was unintentionally exchanged along the sand and silk roads. And this one's going to be a little bit different than some stuff we've done in the past, but it's basically the same type of thing, looking at a few documents and finding some evidence and some main points to take from it. So again, remember we're in the middle of this unit about trade. It's a very long unit, I know, and we're getting towards the end of it. And the question for today is, what was unintentionally exchanged along the sand and silk roads? Because what we've looked at is what people traded for, what they bought and sold, and now we're going to look at the things that people didn't mean to exchange. Sometimes when people interact with each other, there's things that get traded that people don't really realize. Ideas, language. We're in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, the reason that diseases spread is because people interact with each other, right? So you're going to see some stuff about that, and I'm going to go through and give one or two examples of what we're going to be doing, and then kind of leave it on you guys to finish up. So what I did was I divided this into good and bad, because when things are exchanged, it generally falls under it's a good thing to exchange or a bad thing to exchange. So I wrote two claims. The first claim that I wrote was that more bad than good was unintentionally exchanged along the sand and silk roads, meaning that more bad things were exchanged. And then the second claim is the opposite of that. More good than bad was unintentionally exchanged along the sand and silk roads, along these trade routes. So what we're going to look at is I have four sources, and I'll tell you right now, two of them show some good things that were exchanged along the sand and silk roads, and two of them show some bad things that were exchanged along the sand and silk roads. And what you're going to do is you're going to connect each source to the claim. So for example, we're going to look at source A. Source A right here, it's a map. And here's where I say annotation, this is the explanation of what the source actually is. I just moved that around. So anyway, this is a map of what was called the Black Death. It was a pandemic, kind of like what we're going through now, but it was much, 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 much worse than what we're experiencing nowadays. But it was a disease called bubonic plague that spread. It started in Asia, and because of all this trading, these trade routes, it spread along the trade routes throughout Asia into India and northern Africa, and all throughout Europe in the 14th century, in the 1300s. And ultimately, this is why it was much worse than what we're going through right now. It is estimated that it killed roughly 50% of the population of Europe, this disease, meaning half of the people in Europe died in the span of about 5 or 6 years because of this disease. So source A is just a map. I'm going to zoom it in a little bit, but it's just a map that's going to show how quickly this disease spread along this trade route. And we're all just looking at a black screen right now. But essentially, we're going to connect source A to the claim about more bad than good spread. So here's the if you see my arrow, it's kind of like these are the trade routes. And you see, in the 1340s, it started here, and this is around eastern parts of China, right? And then 1345 right there. By 1347, it's here in Eastern Europe. By 1348, it's all throughout Europe, France, Spain, England, and like I said, it killed roughly half the population of Europe. So what we're going to say, I really need to not do so much of the scrolling because apparently it's taking forever today, but we're going to say whenever this loads up, When we say that more bad than good was unintentionally exchanged along the Silk Road, the sand and Silk Roads, we can say that source A supports this claim, because we just connected source A to this claim. I swear I typed that, but apparently my computer's just not going to work for me today. And then we're going to have to just type in a piece of evidence, and maybe I'll be able to, who knows. Let me type. So basically, source A supports this claim, and I'm going to stop my recording. Zoom recording. All right, I'm back. Hopefully this will work now. So source A supports this claim, and then we just need to find a piece of evidence. And since we're talking about a map, there's nothing that you can really copy into here, but you can say that according to the map, the plague spread along the trade routes, killing about half the population of Europe. All right, so then you're going to go down to source B. And source B is talking about like language and how, it says right here, language was one of the main cultural traits that traveled along trade routes, meaning one of the main things about like culture and the way people live and interact that travel. So this infographic shows how many terms, which are common worldwide today, started in one area and traveled along the trade routes due to their necessity in commercial interactions. So like you see the word like tomato and cocoa and cotton. Those are words that started in one part of the country, but these names for these objects are used around the world now. So this is the last example I'll give, but I would put where it says more good than bad was unintentionally exchanged. You look at source B and it's just about language and like people developing a common language for certain things. Well, source B supports the claim that good was unintentionally exchanged because people weren't like setting out to spread their language, it just happened. And here you would just say that as people traveled and and some typo, and traded, they developed common language to communicate better. It's not showing up again, but you get the idea. So essentially, you're just going to look at the other two sources. Source C is a video about inventions and the ideas that were spread along the sand and silk roads. And source D is another disease that spread throughout Africa. So you're going to just basically do the same thing. Is source C something good or bad that was exchanged? And you would place that up here as a second piece of evidence. And same with source D. Is that a good or bad thing that was exchanged? And put, source D wherever that belongs and find a piece of evidence from that source. And that's all we're doing, just connecting, the source and the evidence to a claim. So that's all I have for today. Sorry about the hiccups with the loading, but as always, if you have questions, please ask. Bye.